Hello and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today as we continue our series of virtual town halls brought to you by the Division of University Advancement. Our town halls are a forum for you, our most dedicated and loyal supporters, to get to know our university leaders and to learn about their vision for the future of Miami University. We are coming to you from the extended reality stage inside the brand new McVeigh Data Science building, and I am pleased to welcome David Seidl. David oversees IT services at Miami, and he began his tenure at Miami in December of 2018. He has experience in both higher education and industry arenas, and he is also a prolific technology writer and cybersecurity guru. He has been published numerous times in the academic world for his research, and he has co-authored 24 books on topics like cybersecurity, certification, and cyber warfare. David, thank you so much for being with us today.
Brad, it's a real pleasure, and it's in a really cool space. This is one of my favorite technology spaces at Miami, and I'm glad that we got to host it from here today.
Great. What does data science and the future of data science mean for Miami University and our students?
So Brad, the first thing I'll highlight is how remarkable this building is, because not only is it a technology forward building with amazing resources like the XR stage, but we also took faculty, students, and other folks from across the institution, multiple colleges, multiple groups, multiple disciplines, and we put them in the same space. And then we do events here that bring those groups together. So there's a lot of magic going on behind the scenes. Now, what does that mean for Miami? Miami is focusing on weaving data science throughout many of its programs. That means our students graduate with the ability to handle data, to work with data, and to set themselves up for the future, because it is a data-driven future for all of us.
What does data science and data mean for Miami, and why is this such a great place to learn about that?
Sure. The first thing that I will note there is that Miami is focusing on data science. So this whole building is an artifact of that. And it is a massive undertaking to put this amount of technology and capability in one place. But in our programs, for example, in the Farmer School of Business and the Center for Analytics and Data Studies, we have people who are specifically focusing on data science as a discipline and as an insert into academic programs, so that when you get your degree, you'll know how to use data in that specific degree. If you're a sports leadership and management student, you're going to know how to use data to analyze sports. If you're in Farmer, you're going to look at how you can use it for business. If you're in fine arts, you may be looking at crowds, or you may be looking at other data that makes fine arts better. It's woven through everything at Miami, and it's available and accessible to our students, and we're graduating amazing people with those skills.
Well, not to turn the subject into something that's a little scarier, but obviously we hear a lot about cybersecurity, right? I mean, it affects and impacts virtually everything that we do as we become more and more reliant on the cyber world. Can you talk to us a little bit about what Miami is doing related to cybersecurity and why it's such a rapidly growing field?
Sure. So Miami actually has cybersecurity programs spread out throughout our colleges. They exist in engineering, computer science, they exist in the Farmer School, and they exist in the regionals. And each of those domains has a specific focus around cybersecurity, giving us a really good integrated capability to teach students about cybersecurity. Now, why is that important? We all see that all the time. We see exploits and hacks. This week, or in the past few days at least, we saw everybody's social security number get accessed and hacked. And so that's out there now. We all face those dangers all the time. And we need more people with cybersecurity skills, not only people with just a degree in cybersecurity, but people who have cybersecurity as part of their other degrees. And Miami's making that available across a host of our disciplines. I'm really excited about it as somebody who started in the cybersecurity industry over 20 years ago when nobody knew what it was, and now it's a discipline and Miami's all in.
Wow. So as one that got grounded recently by the CrowdStrike issue from a couple of weeks ago, is the U.S. doing enough to protect all of us from cyber attacks?
My general answer for things like this is no. The United States has a patchwork of cybersecurity laws. We have state laws, we have federal laws. We don't tend to have a lot of expertise that is being aimed at that, and a lot of our laws are not really helping us. But there's also a lack of investment at the federal level and also corporate and business levels in security where it will need to make a big impact. CrowdStrike, interestingly, is not an example of a cybersecurity attack. It was actually a vendor issue. They put an update out that shouldn't have been let out. that is a underlying part of cybersecurity, is making sure you get good updates out there, but it was not an aggressor or an attacker doing something bad. It was a company making a mistake and having an impact that made you stay on the ground instead of flying.
Yeah, there we go. So let's turn from the scary topic of cybersecurity to something that absolutely blows my mind, and that's artificial intelligence, right? And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how Miami is really impacting and affecting not only AI, but how they're teaching our students how to address AI and some of the ethical challenges associated with that. So talk to us a little bit about AI and what we should all learn, at least from a primer perspective.
Absolutely, that is a whole bunch of AI content there. So I'm going to start at one and I'll walk to the other. What Miami is doing with AI is integrating it through many of our courses and starting to look at how we build minors and majors that involve AI. AI is going to be massively impactful for all of us. You are already using AI even if you don't realize it. I rely on spell check and autocorrect to save me from all kinds of mistakes. AI is driving that behind the scenes. But the AI that we're now talking about, what a lot of people are talking about, is what's called a large language model. ChatGPT, Google's Gemini are examples of that, where you can actually interact with AI. It understands human language and what is likely to be a response. We are starting to see AI that actually can do more provable and factual-based things rather than just telling you, I call it a very complex Mad Lib, where it fills in words where it knows that they should go. The tools are becoming much more useful. That also means they're becoming part of our daily lives. We're using them for business. A faculty member friend said that he had responded to all of his emails for a semester using AI. He said the only way people noticed was he was much friendlier than he normally is. And while he was joking, we're going to see that level of impact of AI in both the small things and in much larger things as we move forward. Miami gathers all of the information from our social media posts, and people ask us questions. And one of the staff who was working with that came to me one day and said, "Hey, David, we're trying to analyze all this data. And we're thinking about having a student go through all these posts and kind of create buckets of them and list what they are." And I said, "Well, do you have them in a spreadsheet?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Well, why don't we feed it to ChatGPT and see what it tells us those categories are?" And so instead of a student spending potentially hours with Post-it notes in Excel, in about a minute, we had 13 categories of the most commonly asked social media questions that we could think about and say, do we need a frequently asked questions document or something like that? Now, at the end of that question, you asked about ethics.
Yeah.
And that's huge right now. And I think it's an important place where Miami has a role to play. Ethical use of AI and the ethics of AI are really aligned to our liberal arts tradition. And if you are a creator right now, AI is very concerning. As an author, it is scary.
Right.
Because somebody could feed all of my books to an AI as basically a set of knowledge and sound a lot like David Seidl. And so the question is, do I continue to add value as an author at some point, or will I be replaced? If you are a graphic artist and AI trains on all of your graphic artists and you say, create something in Brad Bundy's distinctive style. He likes to paint, it's red and square and blocky, whatever it is. AI can create art that looks a lot like yours. And so ethically, one of the questions is, should you be able to use other people's material to train AI? A lot of the current AIs were trained on the open internet, and sometimes not on the open internet, sometimes on copyrighted materials and other protected materials. And there's a lot of debate about whether that was okay or not, and whether you owe licensing fees when you use that. As humans, we learn that way, and I don't pay a licensing fee if I'm learning that way from Michelangelo, but there's a question when it's used for commercial purposes. There's also questions around how AIs were trained. Was the data biased? Does the data set have a preponderance of one type of person? If you train it on a forum, is everybody in that forum you and I as opposed to somebody else? Does that look different? So there are questions about AI ethics there. And then finally, one of the other topics I think is really interesting around ethics is when you choose to replace what human labor looks like. And people are, it's threatening when your job changes. And in IT, I've reminded my staff year after year after year that none of us are doing what we did when we started. And all of us are still employed, and all of us are still doing interesting and, in fact, more interesting work than when we started in most cases. So I think AI creates concern, like any major technological change. But I also think it's a huge opportunity, and it's something that Miami is leaning into heavily because the world is changing and we need to stay up with it.
You know, that's a great way to describe that. And as as someone that is married to a Miamian and an English instructor here on Miami's campus, I know she's concerned about original content. So, and I think that many of us know about ChatGPT, but many of us are concerned. So if I were sitting here, if we were joined by a member of the English faculty, what would you say to that person in terms of how they may have to change how they teach the art of writing? Because that's one of the hallmarks of a Miami education, right? We teach people how to write, and no matter where you go and no matter what you do, you will be a better writer because of your experience at Miami. Reassure our English faculty that ChatGPT is not going to replace them in the classroom.
I'm going to make them a little nervous, and I'm going to reassure them at the same time. We all lived, or many of us lived through a technological change where we went from things like typewriters to Microsoft Word, and we had additional tools that made us more effective. Autocorrect means that many of us don't know how to spell words anymore. It just gets fixed. We type something sort of close, and it's like, did you mean that? And it fills it in. ChatGPT and similar tools are going to go farther. That doesn't mean that understanding what good quality writing is going to change. It doesn't mean that understanding intent. If you want to write to persuade versus to write to inform versus to write to make people think, you will write in different ways. And you can prompt an AI to do that, but right now, as they stand, it's not going to be as good as a human written tool. So a lot of the time what we're encouraging people to do is to use the tool and then apply human intelligence in the loop to make it better. And so you can take some of the first labor off and then invest your skill and your wisdom and your human uniqueness in the high value areas. And I think that's the magic of what we're seeing with AI, is that you can do ideation, you can do creativity, you can have a thinking partner, you can have prompting that you might not otherwise have on your own, so you can make yourself more effective while still providing that intensely human and high value output on the back end of it. Now, I tell people, because many of my English major friends say, well, what about children's books, right? You might have grown up reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar to your kids. That kind of book is still going to be written by humans. Many of the other books on the shelf that you don't remember may be written by AI, but they may center your kid in the plot because you can have AI generate that. And that will allow your kid to be more creative because now they can say, hey, Dad, can we have a story about this tonight? And they can have their story, and you can read them their story, and you could do a unique image with it based on that story and make them get involved and prompt them to grow even more because they can do things they couldn't do before. So take off the fetters, think about where you can use it. There's some magic there as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So switching from ChatGPT, what other ways can I use AI in my daily life?
I'm going to start off with a tip. And this is actually an assignment for you. I know you didn't come ready for an assignment, but it's something that one of my staff members did that I think is brilliant. So what Bob did was he did 30 days of AI. He picked a month. And he said, I'm going to use AI in a different way for my work, for my home life, for whatever I'm doing, a unique way each day. And I'm going to report on it to the people I work with in kind of a book report style to tell them what worked and what didn't. And so he would say, I wrote my emails today using ChatGPT or Google Gemini or whatever tool he was going to use. And he used a number of tools while he was experimenting. And they came back one day and said, my partner and I were going to go to a medical appointment, and both of us are bad at asking the doctor questions. And he says, I prompted the AI to help me ask better questions, and we asked the best questions we have ever asked at a medical appointment. He said, I'm going to plan a trip, and I want to do this, and I want these to be the highlights, and I asked AI to help me think about how to schedule that trip, and it had it ask me questions. He made every aspect of his life a little bit better by using AI that month, and sometimes he failed. Sometimes it did not do what he wanted, but most days he learned. So my assignment to you and to our audience would be, can you find a way to regularly get yourself to use AI to see how it works and get that investment in, because that will get you ahead of the curve instead of behind the curve, and I think you'll be well served by it.
It's great. I think many would agree that the world's knowledge is housed on colleges and universities across the world. How can higher education take advantage of AI?
We're doing it in a lot of ways. We're thinking about ways that we can make that knowledge more accessible. For example, if you have a course book, you could feed that book into AI and have it answer questions for your class, much like a TA would. which, having been a TA, I would love it if I didn't have to answer some of the basic questions. I could spend high value time with the students. We were looking at ways to customize classes. So if you are a visual learner and I am an instructor who prefers to teach in another way, could I use AI to help you with visual learning? Are there ways to do that? Can you use it to help you with research? There are research AIs that are coming out right now. And if you're an academic, one of the exciting things for those of us who live in footnotes trying to find the rest of the references we need, there are now AI tools that will help us dive through that list of all of the footnotes and references and find the ones that are relevant to what we're looking at, so we can speed up the amount of time we go looking for those and include them in our own work. So there's tooling everywhere. If you go to AI tool-specific search engines, you can almost always find something that will claim to help you, and many of them will actually be useful.
Wow. So we've talked a little bit about cybersecurity, we've talked a little bit about AI. Talk about the intersection of both of those.
Oh, yeah. I just read an article that said that malicious actors are using AI, but it's not making them terribly more effective right now. But that's probably going to change, because much like AI can make all of us a little more effective in our jobs, or a lot more effective in our jobs, and more efficient, it will help malicious actors as well. Just the ability to respond in ways that appear to be human can be a big deal, and they are becoming increasingly more persuasively human. So I think there's more risk because of AI. I'm not sure I have any great solutions to that either. I am worried about it. You can try to enforce ethics on people who do not have ethics, and they will say, great, now we know what you would prefer us not to do. It's going to be a bit of a wild world for a few years, and we all just have to be a little bit more aware and double check. You probably get the text messages that say, hey, Brad, I need you to go buy me some gift cards. And it's a scam and a spam. And now AI is having that conversation instead of somebody sitting at a cell phone in a call center trying to scam you.
So I still remember the moment, and I had just probably finished my first 5 years in higher education, and I still remember the moment in which the president that I was working for came in and talked about this concept of the World Wide Web, right? And everybody sat there with their mouths dropped. So can you, let's start to talk a little bit about supercomputers and business analytics a little bit.
Sure, and AI, because the magic that makes AI work is essentially supercomputers. Originally, most AI that we currently see is actually using graphics cards or graphic GPUs that actually can do the computations faster. What I will start with by telling you is, if you've lived through the internet revolution, the cell phone revolution, all of these things, we saw inflection points and then we saw a curve. And those curves have been getting shorter and much more vertical. And the curve for AI is the most vertical and shortest curve we've seen yet, and we have not yet seen what all it can do. If you think about the first time you heard about the internet to when you realized half your day was on the internet, 10 years? AI is probably going to be more like 2 years. And so that curve is really, really high. Supercomputing is what makes that work behind the scenes. We are in a data-centric culture. So we capture data from everywhere. We then feed that data into systems and analyze it. We are putting AI on the front end of that to help us do the analytics, so you could ask AI questions. So as you do fundraising campaigns, you're going to be asking AI for advice. You're going to say, help me find these donors, help me do these things. Find me the alumni who are interested in this thing, and it will help you with that big data question, because that will make you more effective. At the same time, it's also making us better in medicine. It's making us better in supply chain and industry. Those are all exciting. Managing that data is hard, the volume of data is hard, but it's a thing we're getting our hands wrapped around, and the world is leveraging it everywhere. It's exciting as an IT guy, it's exciting as a geek, it's also terrifying because there's so much data out there.
Well, speaking as an IT guy, you and your team have had an amazing year this past year. So can you tell our audience a little bit of what you all have been working on? Because it's an exciting time for Miami as we move into this sort of new generation of technology here for the university.
I know there's exactly one thing you're talking about. So I want to brag on my team. We do a lot of amazing things, and I'm so proud of them. But the big muscle movement this year for the entire institution was something called Workday. And we replaced our core business software, all the HR and finance and procurement tools. We spent about 18 months, start to finish, tearing all of the old tool out and putting a new tool in. Now we're getting ready to kick off the student side of it. And people would ask me, How much work is that going to be? I'd say I think we're about 40% done having done the business side. The academic and student side of this is much bigger, and we'll have about 2 years of steady go lives to replace all of our student systems as well. And I'm super excited and super proud of all the people who worked on it.
Well, it is amazing. I've actually been at 2 other institutions when we've gone through that, and I know what enormous lift it is. So congratulations to you and your team. As one that got paid last month, I am happy that at least that function is being taken care of. So the HR piece is running smoothly. Glad to hear that.
A day one rule is everybody gets paid.
Yes,
yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. You know, your team and your department and your division have been recognized as one of the best places to work in IT. What makes that?
Nobody will be surprised by this, but it's people. And it is the ethos of those people. So I got here and I discovered an absolutely remarkable set of people and a remarkable organization. And we started looking for ways to highlight that and to continue to do outreach across the institution. And so if you started working for IT services, one of the first things you would find out is that we are a community. And we're not a community that's just limited to our division. We're an IT community across all of Miami, and we're an IT community that reaches out to the state and to the country. And that means that we have people who will help us on bad days and who we will help on bad days. So when CrowdStrike took out 2,000 machines across Miami's campus, we had people awake at 5 a.m. working together across all of our various divisions and colleges well, cordially, and supporting each other when they needed it. So people would go out of their space to help others. And that magic makes us a really good place to work. And every year we reinforce that, we invest in it, we do a lot of events together, we host the chili contest, we have fun. One of my core values is fun at work, and we have lived that, and I love the organization I work with, and I have fun every day.
Well, going back to the CrowdStrike issue, you know, even though I couldn't get to New York on that day, I was able to get all of my work done. My email was working, my Zoom calls were working. So congratulations. There wasn't a single missed step from a technology perspective, and that's reassuring as a Miami employee for sure.
That means a lot, and that is an expectation we set every day. And because it's so deeply embedded in who we are, I see my people do amazing things, and they just go, that's how it is. And that is so special, and I think it's what you get to feel at the end of the day as well.
So a couple of weeks ago, I happened to be watching television and saw a special on quantum computing. And admittedly, I sat there and I just shook my head because I didn't understand a single thing about it, but it is absolutely fascinating. It's coming, right? It's coming fast. So can you give us sort of an introduction to quantum computing, please?
So if you think AI is breaking your brain, quantum is going to be even worse because it does computations that should normally be very complex very quickly. We are in the very early stages of quantum computing. There are organizations that have quantum computers that have 1,000 of what are called qubits, which are the units of data that are used to compute this. When we go full scale, there will be thousands or tens of thousands of qubits that are in use. And that changes how we do these large computations, how we look at data, and it allows you to do an understanding model of beyond just yes and no. Computers are on or off. Quantum moves beyond that, and so there's almost I frequently call it magic, where you can get answers that would just not otherwise be available. We'll be talking about this a lot more. I know we will be doing some short courses on quantum over time, but stay tuned. This is going to change the world. It's going to make things like encryption have to change a lot, so the way we secure things will have to change a lot, but also how we do medical analysis, how we look at large data sets will change with quantum, and it'll be very fast. So more of us, stay tuned, and you'll learn about it, but it will blow your mind as we get through it.
That's great. I was absolutely stunned by what it was that they are predicting will come out of this new, this new field.
For years, we were talking about the theory, and then we were talking about very small computations. We might be able to do a single qubit or 10 qubits or tens of qubits. And now we're starting to get to the point where we can do actual computation with them and actually build computers that use qubits. And that's what's changing the industry. And that's where you're going to see another one of those super fast ramps. Right now it's the hardware. When we get to the point where the hardware exists, then you're going to see another one of those ramps that's just going to make us feel old really fast. The world's going to change around us, but it's also going to allow us to do cool new things.
That's great. So you're an author.
Yes,
as
sir.
well. You've written a lot, speaking of writing.
Yes.
So tell me about being an author in this space in particular.
I always start with giving credit where credit is due, and that's in two places. The first is my parents are both librarians, and oh man, of the things you could do in your life, writing a book with parents who are librarians is an amazing thing. And first book, I took it home, and they said they wanted a copy. The second book, they wanted a copy. A few books, and they stopped wanting copies. My mom says she can read them if she wants to go to sleep. She's not a cybersecurity person at all. The other person I owe a lot of gratitude to is my co-author, Mike Chappell, who, when I started working at Notre Dame, he was writing books. And I walked into his office. I said, I'm kind of interested. He said, yeah, that's cool. And I came back again. I said, I'm kind of interested. And I think I wore him down over time. And finally, he had me do a tech edit of one of his books. And I worked with 3 authors for a major book in my industry, my cybersecurity industry. And they said, we think you should write. So I wrote a book. And then I did it again. And then I hit a pace I didn't really think I could. And I'm now 24 books in, and I'm working on 2 more right now. So I will have hit my quarter of a century of books pretty soon, and have grown to really love it, and really found it's a neat outlet, and it keeps me current on cybersecurity, where my job frequently keeps me away from that space.
Well, we were talking earlier. My wife is an author as well, so I know what that profession looks like exactly. And everybody that I talk to that's in that space, they always say the same thing: write what you know. And clearly, that's what you're doing, right? You're taking your expertise and your skills and your experiences and teaching others, what it is that you know, which is great. So, what other hobbies do you have?
I told you this was going to be a dangerous question. If the audience has not absorbed this yet, I'm a huge geek. And in fact, I frequently introduce myself at Miami events as Miami's chief geek. There are other people who are probably just as geeky, but it gets the audience to pay attention. And so I grew up as a woodworker. That's a family tradition. I have become a blacksmith. I do some other creative things like that. The thing that's been getting attention recently is that I pick locks. And my grandfather was a locksmith. I didn't learn from him, but I inherited a collection of locks that were his. And I said, I need to open some of these. I had been picking locks a little bit in my security career, and so I leaned into it. I told my students that if they came to office hours, I would teach them to pick locks as long as they promised me they would not break rules with them. And I've leveraged it to meet people I would never have been able to meet, and get students to come talk to me about things they would have never talked about.
That's great. That's
Serial
great.
hobbyist.
So juxtapose that a little bit, right? On one hand, you are charged with the most cutting-edge technology that the world has ever seen, and yet you're talking about 17th and 18th century skills like woodworking and blacksmith and lock picking, right? So how do you become both sides of that?
It is enjoyable to step away. I live a life as a technologist. I've spent my entire adult life working with technology in one form or another. I also like to create. And on days where my brain will not shut up and I need to think about something else, I will go, my friends say I have dangerous hobbies. And I said, yes, because it makes me focus. And I will be working with power tools, or I have a 2,000-degree forge, or I'll be doing something else like that where it requires focus. I get to engage my creative side. And the best thing is, at the end of it, I get to make something and hand it to somebody, and they get something out of it, and I get a reward from that as well. So it's a satisfier, and it keeps me sane, and it keeps me busy, and it gives me something to do.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Well, it has been just absolutely great to get to know you as a colleague. The work that you do, the team that you oversee, such a critical part of what makes Miami so special and so successful. So thank you for being here today and in this amazing arena especially. And thanks to all of you who joined us online. We truly appreciate your loyal and dedicated support for Miami. Thanks again, love and honor.